You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right.
Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Thanks for joining us again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, and today's episode brought to you by Omaha Steaks. I'm talking a gift from the heart, a gift that's going to be remembered with every unforgettable bite. God bless the beef industry, and God bless Omaha Steaks for bringing you this episode. Order with complete confidence today, knowing you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com and use the promo code LOCKED ON, LOCKEDON, promo code LOCKED ON at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. 'Tis the season, beef season, which is all seasons, Chris, but you and I kicking off the episode today in a bowl season frame of mind. We knew that the Red Raiders were headed there a few weeks ago, thankfully. Took some of that pressure off your shoulders heading into the final week of the regular season. You're sitting at 7-5 now as we look ahead to that extra game. And I know projections here or there could come or could go, but what are you seeing so far that you really feel like maybe Texas Tech fans can invest a little bit more into as far as where we'll see game number 13?
Yeah, Calvin, I think once you beat Oklahoma and with the other results like Baylor losing, like Oklahoma State losing, Kansas losing, it really kind of creates a bit of a gap as far as like where the Red Raiders could go in a pecking order from a bowl standpoint. And bottom line is, here's what I can tell you. I mean, either way, I think no matter what happens, you're going to end up in a game, and you're going to end up playing a Power 5 opponent that has had a pretty good season. And to the point where, you know, depending on what matchup you get, you could look at it and go, uh-oh, this is this may be pretty tough. And so let's go through those scenarios, because what you have is I mean, there's some thinking that TCU is going to go to the playoff no matter what, win or lose. I don't know if that's true or not, but even if they do lose and Kansas State wins the Big 12 championship, Kansas State would take the automatic berth, and I believe it's the Sugar Bowl, which is what the Big 12 is tied to. TCU would still take one of those at-large spots in one of those New Year's 6 games. So those two teams are almost – and I think Kansas State, if they lose, they're likely to take an at-large spot as well. So that pretty much locks those two teams up. That's not necessarily guaranteed. If Kansas State were to like lose in a blowout, that they may fall back enough. But we'll just go along the line of thinking that those two teams are kind of spoken for. And at that point, that's where, you know, the pecking order begins, and it's Alamo, it's Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando, it's Texas Bowl, and then Liberty and so on. So I think what you're looking at for the Red Raiders is more than likely you're headed to San Antonio or Orlando. And I think Orlando is most likely, maybe, because it would require the Alamo Bowl to pass up on Texas to have a head-to-head win over them, but they have an 8-4 record. They've won some games down, and I think they would, no matter who they take, whether it's Texas or Texas Tech, they're going to sell that thing out, in my opinion.
Yeah. The other thing for the Longhorns is it's freaking Texas. So, how that goes.
No, exactly. The one thing, though, that is there, I don't know how much of this factors in. You know, Oklahoma and Oregon played in that game last year, but Texas played in the Alamo Bowl the 2 years previous. Now, do they want to be in a scenario where they take Texas in 3 out of 4 years? And I don't know. And you know, some of their high-profile players may not play in that game. I don't know how much of that goes in to a lot of thinking. But and there's, like, I think the USA actually has you going to the Alamo Bowl playing UCLA. I'm about to sign up for that right now. I mean, that's
baby,
it's a premium bowl game. Yeah, and I think that's an opponent you could beat. You'd have a ton of fans there. I mean, sign me up. It would be a big party. But if the Alamo sticks with Texas, I think it really points you to Orlando, which is the next spot. And you've got, fourth place overall. You've finished up strong season, and you've won 3 in a row. And
then you see projections, whether it's the loser of
the ACC title game, which is Clemson and North Carolina. But then you also, I've seen more than one person project Raiders in Florida State. And for all the reasons why you would think going to San Antonio would be a lot of fun because you'd have a ton of fans there, guess what? Guess what Florida State would have in a game in Orlando? I mean, that would be playing a road game, essentially. But and Florida State's won 9 games this year. They've won, I think 5 games in a row to end the season. So that's what I'm saying. It's like you're going to deal with a team that is really good either way, whether it's Pac-12, whether it's the ACC. You're going to end up facing a team that's had a really good season, and you're going to do it against the power and a premium spot and all those things. This is going to be a fun, and that's what you've played your way into. I mean, this isn't going to be a Conference USA opponent, somewhere that you just go hammer and don't, there's nothing to. No, this is going to be a meaty scenario from a bowl game standpoint. The only projection I've seen where it drops the Red Raiders is, and that's just, I think maybe if Kansas State doesn't get an at-large bid, were they to lose, and then it kind of drops everybody down a peg. But it would drop you to Houston playing in the Texas Bowl. Again, same scenario. I think you'd have a ton of fans there. And I've seen that projected, you playing the Florida Gators, which I would sign up for in a heartbeat too. So I think you're going to end up with something really fun and something to kind of feel really good about in a challenging game and an opponent at the end of the season.
Well, if you're watching us on YouTube, you know this. We are joining one another today from parts unknown, thanks to those of you dealing with us on the holiday schedule. And the holidays continue on as it is mule deer season in Cochran County once again this week. And so Chris and I can't see one another. We're joining each other via tin cans and yarn between one another. But Chris, if you could see me right now, you'd know with some of those options you're dropping, my chest is bowed the hell out. I'm ready for something with meat on the bone. You mentioned hey, it's not going to be a Conference USA opponent you go beat up on. Yeah, also maybe not a Conference USA opponent you go lose to, which doesn't feel good either.
Exactly.
I want something with meat on the bone. Give me every bit of San Antonio if we can get there, because you know how that'll go. It'll be a Red Raider fiesta in South Texas. And I'd love Brian Kelly, right? Or Chip Kelly. Which one am I confusing?
Brian Kelly's at LSU.
Yeah,
Chip Kelly.
Brian Kelly.
Yeah, Chip. Yeah.
I'd like to smack, but we won't have the opportunity. Chip Kelly, another Kelly I'd like to smack. Maybe it's the whole Kelly family. I don't know. I'd love that matchup. But also, there is a selfish part of me that's hoping for the Orlando option, because I'd just like to invoke a few of my favorite Ghost references, as in, Orlando, is that you? Damn, baby, what'd you do to your hair? It's autumn sunrise. And I know the audience wants to hear that as well. So I'm really just liking all you're throwing at me, Chris, but I'm wondering, how do you feel about what I mentioned at the beginning there? With this team, I don't mind punching up a little if that's the way the nation would see it. I'd like to maybe get after something with a little meat on the bone and take on a challenge here, because think about the finish to this year if you were to be successful in that situation, the avalanche of momentum you'd hit the offseason with.
And I will say the one thing that I really will always love Chip Kelly for was wrecking the Philadelphia Eagles for a period of time.
God bless him for that.
I just want to make sure that there is somewhat of a soft spot for Chip Kelly, because he basically wrecked my least favorite NFL team just for a brief moment. And so shout out to you, Chip. But I'm with you, man. I think it's because in some of these scenarios, unlike the scenario where you were talking about a second ago, where it's like if you show up against a group of 5 team, you were to lose, it's a bad look, and you have nothing to gain if you do win. You're supposed to, those kinds of things. This could be a scenario to where you've kind of played your way into a fun game. And if you lose it, so what? You probably weren't expected to anyways. Whereas if you do win it or are really competitive and all those things, I think you get a lot of rub off of it, man. And Texas Tech's going to have one of these rosters that I don't think you're going to have a bunch of people bailing out in the portal at all. I also don't think you're going to have anybody opt out of this game, because Tyree Wilson's already been lost and he's going to go pro. So you're not going to have anybody that says, you know what, I'm not going to play in this game because of, whatever. And so you should have a full team. And the way Joey has been able to motivate these guys, and he was there firsthand, and he saw exactly how motivated this team was against Mississippi State last year and how much that propelled the offseason. Yep. And I think that experience for him and seeing this group of kids, I think went a long way with him. And I think that is something that he certainly noticed and was semi a part of. And so any of those games against an SEC, ACC, or Pac-12, an upper tier team, sign me up. I'd love to get a shot at some of these teams, and especially if you're in San Antonio and Houston, because you're going to sell that thing out. And I think it's going to be a ton of Tech fans that are now excited to go to a bowl game again. You've had some stretches where you haven't gone. And if it's an in-state game, look out, man. Texas Tech will absolutely sell a ton of tickets because of kind of Joey Juice, man, and all the attention that this program has got.
Man, shout out to H-Town, especially with the People's Champ recently in the rear view, rocking all of us at Raider Alley. What up to Paul Wall? That was incredible. Made me forget there was even a football game coming up next when that thing ended. That was how good it was. But I want the Alamo City, Chris. I think that Texans franchise in Houston may be just so soul-sucking. I don't even want to play in their building. Don't even rub that juju off on us. Let's go dance with that San Antonio Rose. That'd be a lot of fun. Sounds like we've got some fun options that we'll sort through here as we get closer to that decision being made either way. And that's the luxury of setting yourself up the way that you did to wrap up the regular season. Chris mentions a couple of things we're going to dive headfirst into coming up before we're out today. Number one, eligibility radar. Are you curious about who's got the biggest choices to make this offseason among the Red Raiders? We will touch on some of those that you need to be keeping tabs on this offseason coming up. And also, immediately ahead, I want to continue the bowl season theme, Chris, because we are entering into one of my most frustrating periods of time as a college football fan. What do? We lay off 3 to 4 weeks after championship weekend before the year's quote unquote most important games. Has it made sense to you out there? Probably not. Could it change in the near future with an expanded playoff? What kind of timeline should we get used to? We're getting into that coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Quality, convenience, everything you need to deliver an unforgettable holiday gift experience. And I can't hammer enough on the reliability of it all. When you're sending a gift this time of year, you want to know that it's going to arrive when it's supposed to, and the quality is going to be what you are expecting to count on. And that's what you're getting with Omaha Steaks, America's original butcher. Since 1917, it's a holiday gift that's guaranteed to be loved. Everything you need to give a gift that's simply perfect this holiday season. Gifts like perfectly aged tender steaks, juicy burgers, decadent desserts, or classic comfort meals. A gourmet gift from Omaha Steaks is a gift from the heart, a gift that's going to be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Plus, with this special Locked On Texas Tech offer, you're getting $30 off your order. There is a minimum order required, but find out more today. Shopping early and beating the shipping rush with Omaha Steaks. Whether you're shopping for friends, family, colleagues, or yourself, that's all right too. Every order is backed by their unconditional money-back guarantee. $30 off with our promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON. That's promo code Locked On at checkout to get $30 off. Omaha Steaks is ready to ship your order right away, so shop early right now. Beat the shipping rush. Go to omahasteaks.com and use the promo code Locked On at checkout at omahasteaks.com. Thanks Thanks for joining us again on Locked On Texas Tech on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Subscribe if you have not so far so you never miss an episode. Hoops on your mind? We got you covered coming up on the other side as we're getting ready for the Red Raiders and Hoyas, ATL, Georgia. We'll get to that coming up on the next episode of Locked On Texas Tech as Mark Adams and company are back in action from United Supermarkets Arena. But football on the brain, and as we were touching on bowl options, Chris, for the Red Raiders just a moment ago, got me really wondering about the near future for a college football fan, because I don't know about you, but this time of year has always just generally frustrated me, whether you're getting ready for a bowl game or whether you're getting ready for, something that has a path towards a national championship. What an odd and bizarre schedule as you lay in wait for 3 weeks for some teams, 4, 5 weeks, I suppose, for other teams. And I truly have always felt like if you were going to improve some things as far as this time of year goes for the college football fan or college football participants, you've got to improve this timeline. Seems like we're on the cusp of an expanded playoff and what could soon be a better experience for the fan. But how have you processed, both as an insider viewing those who are participating, but as a fan also, this kind of bizarre time of year when you get into late November, early December, before you hit what's supposed to be the culmination of your season?
Yeah, and I think people that follow the sport realize that it hurts the sport a bit, because it's hard to you're in the groove. There's a lot of excitement about it, and then you just go take a nap, and it's hard to kind of like, oh yeah, man, the playoffs are about to happen, or hey, New Year's Day is rolling around and all that stuff. They don't have an official start date yet on the expansion. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of kind of when. I think they're hoping that it can be in place by the 2024 season, so it's not too off into the distance. And I think they're trying to work with the granddaddy of them all,
Yep,
bowl, to try to, they take their
game very seriously. Maybe some folks
think that they take it too seriously and that they don't want to. So I don't. They've got to work through that part of it. But bottom line is, to the general fan, once they work through that part, they're going to move the season up. Okay, the whole season's going to start, a week earlier, I think, than we're used to. So kind of like I think that the same time frame that high school season starts around here, like week 0, if that's what you want to call it. We get a we get a handful of games in kind of but late August, and then then really it's Labor Day weekend when everybody kind of gets rolling. But I think that they're talking about moving it up a week, and so with that, with the expansion, I think you would have less of a gap at the tail end, just because they've got to have. I mean, there's going to be 3 kind of separate weekends instead of just 2 of the playoff. And so you've got to have quarterfinals before you can have semifinals, before you can have the final, and they've got to stretch that out a bit. And so you're going to get, and I haven't seen this officially, but I don't know if we're talking week of Christmas or kind of mid-December for quarterfinals, and then semifinals are kind of still played at the same time that we're used to now, and then the championship game played on the 11th or 12th or whatever. But that's what you're kind of looking at. So what it means is you're going to have very meaningful football played a week earlier than we have, and you're also going to get meaningful football played when the season starts for everybody. You're gonna kick it off much earlier than we are used to for everybody, and then they're gonna mix in a couple of bye weeks and some different things. So every team should have, But bottom line is, it just stretches the calendar out just a bit, And I think it's going to be 1 week essentially, but with that, there's going to be less of a gap here at this time of year compared to what we've been used to.
Chris, have you ever bought into, because I've just explored every argument against an expanded playoff and totally just reformatting the system for as long as I've been involved in discussing these things, because I became so frustrated with it so quickly when I was an everyday observer, and so little of it made sense to me as far as this goes. So one of the arguments against this type of maneuvering or additional games, expanded playoff, et cetera. And one of the arguments for, I guess, this kind of dead zone, well, we go to the academics, play in school. What up to Cardale Jones? Is there really, from your view inside and spending time with the athletes and coaches, I mean, what type of challenge is there really as it relates to final exams and academic obligations during this time of year? And also keeping in mind that if we're talking about an expanded playoff, we're talking about a very small percentage that is, to an extended point, actually impacted by these things. But what does a student athlete actually go through as you get into early December? And I know there are some responsibilities as far as final exams are concerned.
Yeah, I'm not going to listen to that argument, like on the academic part.
My guy.
Like, come on, man. I mean, like, like I'll tell you, COVID was a mess, right? It caused so many problems. But what it showed us is that you can pivot, you can do some different things to make it, easier. We learned how to Zoom. Everybody was taking online classes. There's so many ways, like workarounds to make it easier, work smarter, not harder kind of thing. And even, because I think but I'm not listening to the academic argument part of it. I'm just not, because there's such a month or 6 week gap there where there is no school for these kids. And final exams is something that, they would have to work through or adjust. That is a real thing. But I think you can easily, maneuver your way around that for the few teams that it would affect. I guess that's probably worth mentioning. But, one of the arguments I was willing to listen to, there's a couple things. One, hey, player safety. We're asking these kids to play, a bunch of extra games, and it's a very hard sport, and guys are getting dinged up. And so that's why I think they're very cognizant of enough rest in between these games, to make sure that people can put their best foot forward. The other part of it was logistics, and like, okay, how do we, like the hotel, stadium availability, the travel, all of these components, and all that. But I think COVID showed you, man, you can drop things at in a minute's notice and like cancel a game, add a game. Hey, we need to schedule a game. Hey, we're not going to start this game at 2:00. We're going to start it at 7:00. Whatever the case was, we just saw way too much of that to where you can kind of, and there's probably some things that I'm not considering or thinking of, but I just don't, for it's going to affect. There's just way. I mean, let's just circle back to the main point. There's just way too much money at stake. They'll figure it out. And I think that they've even talked about doing the on-campus stuff, which is going to factor in if a team wants to do that, or if they want to go play at a dome stadium nearby, and it's their
go play home stadium, kind of a neutral site scenario.
If it's their home game and they don't want to play it on campus because the weather may be bad, whatever. Right. Those are all easily workable situations. Somebody can figure that out. There's too much money at stake here to not want to do it. And once they figure out the logistics of it, I think that this is what we'll be kind of not stuck with, but I think it'll just be a matter of time before that thing expands to 12 is what I think. I just don't, I don't know where it ultimately will stop, but I think when you get to 8, people are going to be like, it wouldn't be that much harder if we get to 12, which would, again, it would add another week to the season because you'd have another round of games you'd have to play, kind of like a wild card round, if you will, and maybe those top 4 teams get a bye instead of just the top 2 or whatever the case is. So, but yeah, I'm not listening to the academic part of it at all. That just save it.
But you're really touching on some profound things in there, especially your first thought about COVID, in that it showed us a pivot is possible. And whoever made us think it wasn't, or it was like moving battleships, shame on you. Because we saw where there is a will, there is truly a way, with so many decisions that went down. Number one, but I think you also raise a good point. And I'm just thinking about how I view that as a fan that wants to see it expanded. Because I think the whole FBS enterprise is farcical as far as the pursuit of a national championship. You're the only level that does it this way. The logistics is something that I probably consider too little. I really don't consider enough, but I like hearing maybe some on-campus opportunities could help to ease some of that challenge. And I got to tell you, the safety argument you bring up, that's definitely the other one on the short list that they love to throw at you to say this is not possible because of the safety blanche. Think of the safety blanche. And I'm here to tell you, I've been at the front of this line forever, Chris. If you're so worried about the safety, then screw off with one of these throwaway non-conference FCS or even lower level group of 5 games. Fine. You got to get rid of one. Fine. If that's what you really want to do, which I think is calling their bluff because they would never want to give up another game. I really don't believe. But what college football fan wouldn't be willing to give up some of the stuff you see in the non-conference if they said otherwise? All right, well, we'll give in now because it was a matter of safety and we'll expand this playoff as long as there's not over X number of games. That's just what I sit alone in my house and have a discussion with myself about. I don't think it will come to that point because I think the money is far, far too appealing, as you have alluded to there. But I really hope that at some point we see what you began this entire conversation with as far as this timeline conversation is concerned, something that doesn't hurt college football. You nailed it right off the bat. Plain and simple, at the end of the day, brass tacks are this period of time hurts your momentum, right? As a sport, whether you're jockeying as far as television attention or Twitter attention, I don't know, whatever it might be, you get into this weird lull. And surely enough people out there want to do something about that, maybe to improve the situation.
Yeah, and the other thing too to consider that they have considered, there's a couple things, and it's player availability, like as in safety part of it and all that. Because technically you already do have some teams that, well, I guess it would only be 2. Some teams could potentially play in 15 games, this season, just because if they play in their conference championship game, they play in the semifinals, and then they win that and play in the finals, that they're going to play a 15-game season, and it only affects 2 teams. But I've heard of, is this where they like add to the scholarship limit and maybe let you add a few players, to help with player availability and just having enough guys available and all those things. But I think we've seen so many guys opt out of bowl games just to protect their own interests, and I can't hate on it. I get it. If there's not a lot at stake and you're trying to go make a living at this deal, by all means, man, if that's what's best for you, then you should do it. It's better for some guys than it is others, but I think it keeps more of those guys engaged in playing those final games for their college. And because, obviously you have a chance more teams would have a chance to win a national championship. So there's a lot to consider, but I do think it ultimately here pretty quick, it's going to all change. And I think we'll all kind of like it.
Fingers crossed, exactly what you said there. It's resulting in something better for the college football fan. That's whom I'm most interested in because that's what I am, through and through. And I think all of us have always felt like, man, it could be so much more, whether it's the timeline or just the general product. And it seems like after, more than a century, we're finally creeping our way possibly towards something that resembles that. If all these bow-tied dorks on the Rose Bowl committee will get out of the way. We're going to involve you, guy. We love grandpas. We want to be around the grandfather, grandmother. I don't even remember their tagline. We just love grandparents in general on Locked On Texas Tech. So we want to involve you. But please, maybe humble yourself for just a moment and fit in where you get in, or get in where you fit in. Coming up dead ahead before we're out of here, it's eligibility radar time. We're going to get to talking some big choices for Red Raiders, really in all phases of the game this offseason, some to keep tabs on, and we'll recap some of what has been revealed so far as the futures of some of these guys that obviously I think most of us or all of us would love to see back on campus, but understand options that they may like to pursue further otherwise. So we'll get to that coming up next before we are out of here on today's episode of Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode also brought to you by Jay's Salsa Company. Jay salsacompany.com is the website, and that's where you want to get to up your family's salsa experience this holiday season. You may be thinking turkey and salsa, Christmas and salsa. You must be from outside the great state, because salsa is a staple any time of year on my family's table, and we are now a Jay's Salsa family, Chris. I'm glad to report it, because it's a Red Raider family recipe, 20 years in the making. Just makes me feel a little tighter, as far as that red and black bond, especially when you see that jar on the shelf. That's for my people, man. And if you're wanting to up that salsa game this holiday season, jsalsacompany.com is where you need to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, you could put it on, some breakfast tacos too. So you're thinking breakfast, and Christmas Eve at the Level household, it involves some tamales and some chips and salsa. Yeah, giddy up. But yeah, jsalsacompany.com. And you can get it at United, you can get it at Albertsons, you can get it at HEB, in and around Lubbock. You can obviously get it online. They'll ship it wherever you are. But the good people that own and run that deal, Red Raiders, and you're right. If you're in the store shopping for it, look for the red and black jar, man. Hot or mild, or buy them both and mix them up.
That's right. I love seeing Lubbock, Texas on that label. It's the Tech fans tailgate staple. So take it to the bowl game, Orlando, San Antonio, wherever you're rolling. If you were blessed by God to be in the 806, you can find it at HEB in Lubbock, or in Texas and New Mexico in over 90 stores, most United supermarkets, Albertsons supermarkets, or Market Streets. Or if you're not in that vicinity, don't sweat it, because they're shipping it anywhere in the U.S. at jsalsacompany.com. Get there now at jsalsacompany.com. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Subscribe if you haven't so far, so you never miss an episode. It's a new episode each weekday morning on YouTube, 7 a.m. premiering there, or you get a little earlier if you're getting in on that podcast tip. Maybe if you're getting out in the deer blind a little earlier and you want to catch up before the YouTube audience, you got it there anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks for making us a part of your day. And before we wrap up today, Chris, I'm really just asking you off the air as a Tech fan, hey, will you tell me who could choose to play football again here next year if they want to? Because we're still in the shadow of COVID eligibility and bonus eligibility and super seniors. And we'll get to some further in-depth rundowns of the roster as we get into the offseason. But, man, there's some heavy hitters that have some big decisions coming up this offseason as to remain on campus or seek opportunities elsewhere, professionally or otherwise. We've actually had some light shed on some of these guys I know we've touched on in some weeks gone by. But I'm curious, Chris Level, what does your eligibility radar look like? Who are some of those on the short list that you're really keeping tabs on?
Casey, we'll try to simplify here. There's a handful of guys that I think that and let's just start on the offense. I mean, really everybody on the offense can come back. I think the following names are ones you should pay attention to, because this is where the bulk of your that side of the ball is all going to return. They don't really have a choice there unless they choose to go to the portal or whatever. But they don't. There's not many decisions to make. The handful of guys that I think have decisions to make are the following that I'm aware of anyway. SaRodorick, and I think Coach McGuire said after the game, the plan all along has been for SaRodorick to kind of move on and go try to seek an opportunity at the professional level, or just move on in general. He's going to play in an all-star game that I know Joey's really excited about. It's quite the invite that he got. But Coach McGuire said after the game versus Oklahoma, the plan all season long has been for SaRodorick to forgo his extra year, and he's geez, man, the guy's, I think, third on the list in all-time touchdowns, scoring, and all that at Texas Tech. So he's done about everything you could do here. And
Emptied the bucket.
I was about to say, I wish him nothing but the best. Henry Teeter, I think, has an option to come back. I think that he wants to come back. I think they're having to file a waiver to try to see if he can, get that extra year. It deals with the situation at Holy Cross, whether he was injured or whether he played enough games. I'm not real sure.
What?
But Coach McGuire is and we've talked about that on the football broadcast. And then the other one is Weston Wright. Weston Wright has the option to return. He's an offensive lineman, and I don't know what he'll do. And there's no guarantee that if he comes back that he would still start. And I think that's probably something that, because Cole Spencer is a guard, and I think they ultimately, Coach McGuire has said, we talked about this on the football broadcast too, they'd ultimately like to play Dennis Wilburn at guard. And that's originally what he was. It's just that he snapped the ball so well and could call out the front so well that they played him at center. So that's that side of the ball. On the defensive side.
Wait, hold on just a second, because you're giving me some really interesting stuff there. First off, I didn't know I was going to have to have beef with Holy Cross possibly this time. Come on, get your paperwork together. Let's get this organized at Holy Cross. Weston Wright, what I'm hearing there sounds like it sounds like a demotion, to be honest with you.
Well, no, I'm just saying I don't know what would ultimately be I think it's just worth the conversation. I mean, I just think even just because he comes back doesn't mean that he's your guaranteed starter at left guard, I guess is my point.
Are you surprised to be saying that after another year? Because I thought he was one of the guys coming in, and I was like, all right, well, I don't know if I'd call him entrenched, but he's a known dude, I guess, at least among what you had coming into the year.
I don't know. I think that that's a spot that they want to get much better at, just the position group in general. Sure. So, but I also don't think that if Weston Wright wants to come back, that you go, no, no,
right.
We don't want you back too. So we'll kind of let that, play out.
But there's a lot of pressure on that spot, right? That group, there's a lot of pressure.
They're trying to get better. They could even go to the portal and go shopping there a bit too, because that's something that that's fairly widely known, is that they would like to maybe add a portal guy there, one or two of them there. So we'll just kind of see what happens there. Because again, if you don't play Dennis Wilburn, you need to go find a center, I guess, so we'll see. And then obviously I'm not even going to mention all the quarterbacks, because they can all come back. Who knows what happens there? That's probably a whole separate conversation. But on the defensive side,
I think that, Coach McGuire has basically said
it, that Reggie Pearson and Dadrion Taylor are both going to come back. And I think that that's great news. Really, it comes down to the two starting corners and your two defensive tackles, and Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford. I think with the two tackles, I think that they do the same thing. That's my opinion. I think that they either both come back or they both leave. I think I just think they're very tight. I think that they're not guaranteed in it. I don't think they have got an overwhelming NFL draft grade or anything like that. And so that's where maybe NIL comes into play, and maybe you can, entice them to want to come back. And rare is it that, and it speaks to who these two kids are, but rare is you've got a couple of defensive tackles, which is not the most glamorous position, and they are in some ways faces of your program. I mean, Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings, everybody knows who they are. They're wonderful personalities. They're completely bought in. They're good players. I mean, on and on it goes. So you'd be doing backflips if you could get them both to come back. And the other two guys, this is where, we talked about this on the broadcast recently as well, in that the two corners, these are guys who legitimately have NFL opportunities because the measurables, because they've been durable, that they've been good players. I think you're more likely to get, I should say, Rashad Williams to come back than Malik Dunlap. And the reason why on Malik Dunlap is because I think at the time of the draft this next year, he will be 24 years old. And he's got the highest draft grade out of any of these people we're sitting here talking about. And at some point, you just almost age out of the draft scenario. So, like, teams they just don't want to, they don't want to take a finished product. They don't want to draft age. They want to draft a young guy that can kind of grow into a lot of football left in him and all those things. I don't know what his grade was. I just know that he had the highest grade of everybody that we're sitting here talking about from the people that could return. And so only because his age do I think that it may be tough to get him back. But I think Raider Williams could absolutely come back. And so that's kind of in a nutshell where that group, sits right now. So you could have some guys enter the portal or something like that, but these are guys that can, and I think there was some chatter about Kosai Eldridge. I think there was some discrepancy on if he actually played in enough games to trigger his eligibility clock in his first year at junior college. He's not real sure. He's not real sure where that stands. That they had talked about doing a waiver and things like that. So I don't know where that stands. I mean, if you can get him back, I mean, yeah, you say absolutely yes if you can work through it. But I don't know if the paperwork is on your side there or not. So that's kind of yeah.
What? Hey, JUCO paperwork? Come on, that ain't nothing but a thing. Let's get on down there and straighten that out. I love so far we've mentioned Holy Cross paperwork and JUCO paperwork for a couple of these guys. Just let you know how wild and woolly college sports can get.
Oh yeah,
here or there. And man, if you don't want to subscribe after that, do you even want Texas Tech Insight? That's the luxury of knowing Chris Level right there. You're not going to get it as short and sweet as Level just gave it to us there, man. That, honestly, as you're running off some of those names, Chris, I'm thinking, okay, this is a few more than I even anticipated.
Well, and I'll give you one more.
Okay.
And this guy is maybe the best of all of them. Is Trey Wolf. He could come back. I believe he's married now, and I think at last conversation, I think his wife has got a job in Houston, so it may not be what he chooses to do. I don't know, but I think he does have the option to come back. And again, if you get him back after the season that he just put together, I mean, I think you say absolutely. But they have a replacement ready in Gino Garcia and all that. But I don't want to slide. And I guess I'll just stay on the specialist. Austin McNamara has the choice to come back too, and he's somebody that. I think he's got a chance to be in the NFL. I don't know if he's a draftable guy per se. I wouldn't just totally rule that out because he checks a lot of the boxes on a measurable standpoint too, and he's such a good athlete. But he's got the option, I believe, to come back as well. So again, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I didn't want to forget about those two specialists because those are really good players.
No doubt. And as long as there is Al Davis or a spawn of Al Davis in the league, anybody has a chance to get drafted with measurables. So
that's right.
I mean, what you're describing is really interesting because I'm sure the reality will be a little bit more of a mixed bag than I'm thinking here today. But it's almost like, hey, are you returning as a veteran team or are you returning as a green team in some ways? Like, really got a good collection of guys that if they make a certain choice, could really have you in a different state, I think, as far as the experience and the snaps that your guys have seen in 12 and beyond.
I completely agree. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, you have the chance to be really old on defense again if you get some good news here in the coming weeks. And odds are you're going to get some good news and some not so good news kind of thing, right, if you want to look at it that way. So it'll be a mixed bag of some. Ideally, it all break your way, but I bet you get a few guys that just want to go do something different or try to take a chance and go play at the next level. But if you can get some of these guys back, it's just a win. Because these are all guys that you would want to come back. There's some guys that you may go, and go do your thing. You've graduated. We appreciate everything you've done, but we're going to go ahead and recruit to this spot. But
Right.
all the guys that we've mentioned here, that they're not in that category.
Before we leave it today, Chris, I'm just curious because it's a totally new era with name, image, and likeness rights. Is that impacting all of the aforementioned decisions, or is it 50%? How to change the game for guys at these points in their football lives?
For certain of them, it's gonna factor in at some level. In other words, some of these guys, if they choose to come back here, they're going to get taken care of. I mean, there's already been meetings that have taken place. I don't know, a lot of how that works, but with the Matador Club and some of those things out there, some of these guys like Tony and Jalen and Rayshad, for example, I'd be willing to bet if they choose to come back that they'll get maybe more than what others are getting, because I believe Tyree Wilson got more than everybody this year. And guess what? It was worth every penny.
Hope so.
Yeah. So that's just kind of that's just the nature of the business. And I think Joey is very cognizant of the fact that, he wants it to be equal. He wants it to be fair, but there's some exceptions there. And I think that if there's the means to take care of certain people, if they've got a choice to make and you can try to do right by them, I think that's exactly what and I say you as in a lot of people involved that want to do right by these kids. And, cause I mean, think about it. You could, this is a hypothetical out there. There could be folks out there that, could be making the decision. Hey, look, I'm not an NFL guy. I can go play one more year. I can enter the portal and I could go make a really nice living somewhere for the right price and play my last year wherever. Some of that is going to go on around the country. I mean, that's just the bottom line. If I'm not going to get picked, but I'm a pretty good college player and I've got another year left, I need to make it worth my while. And some of that is going to go on. I mean,
I'm not mad at it.
No, that's the system. That is the system. And so I think that, so having said that, with that laid out as the groundwork there, if you've got some of these same types of guys, I think you better try to do right by them, or somebody else. Not that they would be looking to leave, but I think you get what I'm saying. That not that these guys would be mercenaries.
It's life,
and be
man.
But that's
business.
right. It's supply and demand. That's exactly right.
It really is business, and I think it's better for them. So more power to them, and I hope that Texas Tech is in a position to make it better for us, and more power to us. I know that the Red Raider faithful have been ambitious and aggressive, and what sounds like organized in a lot of ways, and trying to really be bold on that front. So,
and there's more coming. There's more on the way on a lot of that stuff. I think you've got some really smart people and well-funded people that are, really understanding the way that this thing works. And luckily, I feel like we're going really long here. I didn't intend to do that, but like Cincinnati, for example, Luke Fickell takes the Wisconsin job. And Cincinnati just started their first collective like a couple of weeks ago. They're so far behind in the NIL game that it's just hard to compete and sustain things at this level now if you're not on top of that part of it. And you've got to be organized, you've got to be well funded, and you've got to have, get ego out of it. You've got to, everybody's got to be on the same page. And right. I think Texas Tech was really out of the gate. I mean, they were on it, man. And, there's other schools that are a bit further down the road than you are, or maybe even a bit more well funded. But I think you're right in the thick of this thing, and I think it will only benefit your football program.
Man, if you ain't still here at this part in the episode, you're missing out, and you're not hearing this anyway. So those of you still here, thank you. We appreciate the extended listening, trying to get that time spent listening number up always, and tell those who might have tuned out what they missed as we wrapped up this episode of Locked On Texas Tech. And, oh, yeah, good luck to the Cincinnati. I'm sure the guys that are putting chili on spaghetti in 2022 are going to get their NIL organized real soon. Real soon it'll work out. Cody Campbell said, Chris, as we all saw, I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, saw, soon top 25 competitively will mirror top 25 NIL efforts. And I think most of us that are paying attention understand why that's rooted in a lot of truth. And man, I'm excited to see among those in West Texas, 806, Red Raider inclined, the efforts that you've put together so far. Man, thanks for the insight, Chris. That's some interesting stuff, and a lot of those tables still left to be turned. So you'll want to stick with us throughout the offseason here on Locked On Texas Tech as we see some of these decisions come to pass. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech your first listen or viewing each day on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts, and anywhere for your next listen. Locked On Sports Today. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. Chris, we're doing it again on the other side, man. Thank you for dealing with my effort to feed venison to the family as we're looking to stack these Cochran County mule deer 10 high, and we got a few to go. So I appreciate you working with me once again this week.
Hey man, do your thing. Bring home all the venison, man. And appreciate it. We'll talk more this week. Keep hope alive, my man.
There we go. I have not been invited into the inner circles of the Tech NIL effort just yet, but it's mostly because I'm only trading in venison so far this year. So we'll see if that becomes a more sought after currency maybe in 2023. But I'm stacking them again. Either way, just in preparation. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, and we'll catch you the next time around on Locked On Texas Tech.